Hey everybody, think like a free man. I am going to try to demystify a very complex decision, and that's the decision on what carry pistol to get. And what I'm going to go through is I'm essentially going to describe a process that you may find useful to follow that'll help you decide on the carry pistol. And for the assumptions of this video, this is for a carry pistol that may be used for home defense, but concealed carry is the main objective that I'm thinking of for the video. A couple things before we get started. Got to be legal, so get legal advice on this process: how to buy, how to carry, how to transport. For example, state laws vary widely. In some states you don't even need a permit to carry. Other states shall issue permits. Other states it's almost impossible to get a permit. So you need to check on the laws. And if you're new to this, you've not gone shooting, you've not carried before, go to a gun shop, contact the NRA, concealed carry organizations. They will help you. Read the instructions on whatever you buy and make sure you take training. Now, in some states, training is mandatory for you to get a license to be legal to carry. So at the end of the day, be legal, be safe. The responsibility is up to you. So the process I'm going to take us through is we're going to start with what's your use case? In other words, what are you going to be doing when you're going to be carrying? And I'll explain that in a little bit. Then I'm going to talk about, how is it you want to carry? Then we'll talk about revolver versus semi-auto, caliber. We'll get into a potential make and model that I can recommend, and just a few other things. So this is too complex of a subject to do in one video, so I'll eventually do other videos to unpack some of the details here. So this will just be an overview to get you started. So we'll start with the use case. I had made the comment, what are you going to be doing when you carry? And you may be a security guard carrying a lot of cash. You may be walking on the beach and want to protect yourself. You may be wearing a trench coat because it's very, very cold outside. And the reasons those kinds of things are important is, like, if you're wearing a trench coat, you can't carry in your pocket or inside your waistband. You just won't be able to get to the firearm. If you're on the beach, you wouldn't be able to carry with a belt because you may not have a shirt on if you're a guy. Now, if you say, well, I want to be able to carry everywhere, well, there's going to be a lot of different use cases where you want different firearms with different holsters for different things you're doing. And that's something, again, those will be subjects of different videos. But those are some of the things to be thinking about. The next point of the process, we'll talk about the method of carry. Now, there's a lot of ways to carry legally. I'm going to cover what I've seen. Actually, I haven't seen it because it's all concealed. I will cover what I'm aware of as typical ways to carry. That's inside the waistband, a couple different ways. Outside the waistband, pocket carry, purse carry, ankle carry. You can go under the arm carry, and there's a few other styles that we may or may not talk about. For each of the carry styles or carry methods, I'll just kind of mention what they are, and I'll mention a few of the pluses and the minuses that I've experienced. That may not be a complete list, but again, just for an overview. First, inside the waistband. This seems to be the most popular carry method amongst guys, amongst a lot of pros, guys that have been doing this for a while. It's really nice. Inside the waistband, appendix carry is it's basically right in front of you. It's very accessible. It's very easy to conceal. It's very quick to draw. The bad part about it, it's not as fast as drawing as pocket carry. And that may be a controversial statement. Again, that's for another video. It's also hard to sit down when you're appendix carrying. It's not always comfortable. It's kind of a pain to set up, at least in my opinion. And worst of all, it's pointed at vitals. When you think about appendix carry, what it's pointing at, among the other maybe more obvious things, your femoral artery is right in that area. And one of the first rule of shooting is don't point the gun at anything you don't want to destroy. So I personally don't carry that way. I just don't prefer to. Most people do, but it's stuff to think about. Other inside the waistband options is some people carry at the 4 o'clock, which is kind of in the back of your hip if you're right-handed, on your shooting side. That's very comfortable. It's not pointing at any vitals. Pretty quick to draw, although not as fast as pocket and appendix. The only bad thing about that is it's a little easy to print. It's hard to sit down with a seat in the back. So if you're going to be driving, you got to constantly take it in and out. And if someone saw you printing, that means they could see you carrying. they could get the drop on you and get a hold of your gun. Again, not a bad way. I carry that way sometimes. It's not a bad way. Outside the waistband, that's carrying a holster outside of your belt. That's a real nice, if you want to have a big machine, and I say machine, firearm, same thing, gun, same thing. So if you got a big machine, very heavy, you can get really durable holsters, and if you got a jacket on, you could carry a very large weapon without any worry. So outside the waistband has an advantage in that regard. The only downside there is you got to be wearing a jacket or something really loose and baggy to be able to conceal it. And I do prefer concealed carry over open carry, even though open carry is legal. I don't want people to know that I'm carrying. And there's that's again source of another video, but I prefer to conceal. Now, when I do carry, I prefer pocket carry. It's the easiest for me to suit up. I find it very fast on the draw. I can draw faster there than any other carry method. It's easy to conceal. Don't necessarily need a belt. It works in gym shorts. You can be limited on the wardrobe, but in other ways it somewhat liberates you on the wardrobe. For example, I can be on a beach in a pair of shorts, pocket carry, and not be wearing a shirt. Everything's cool. No one can see it. And there's pistol options that help you pocket carry, and that may influence what you ultimately get. Ankle carry, that's when you have a holster on your ankle. That's okay for a backup gun. I would never do that for a primary. It's too hard to get to lean, and to get to it, not only is it slow, you have to put yourself in a very disadvantageous position that I just don't think is realistic in a critical incident. There's another way to carry. You could use a purse. I generally don't carry a purse, more of a guideline than a rule. But if I did, a purse wouldn't be a bad way to carry, but you got to make sure at least two things. Is one, the purse never leaves your sight, because you got to be responsible for the machine inside. And two, make sure it never gets ripped away from you. So not a bad way to carry for women or men who carry purses, but just a couple things to watch out for there. I had mentioned, like, if you had a trench coat on, something long that would make inside the waistband, outside the waistband pocket carry difficult. Underarm with a chest rig carry may not be a bad way to go. I find that uncomfortable and pain, so I try to not wear real long coats that I can't carry in another method. But that's another way to carry if your situation, if you're in winter, you're wearing long trench coats, that sort of thing. And carrying means carrying. Concealed carry and having it in your glove box and you're out walking around, you might as well have the gun on the moon. It's got to be with you to be effective, and it's got to be loaded and ready to go. So those are the most typical ways to carry. There's a few other things I skipped for now, but again, subject of another video. Once you do, once you do figure out a method of carry and saying, okay, I want to carry concealed, I want to carry inside the waistband or whatever, there's a whole other decision process on what holster you would buy. Pretty much everybody I know, including myself, has a box of holsters that you buy, you try, it works for a while, it works in this situation. You'll feel your way around that. Some of the ones I pick are DeSantis, Safariland, Blackhawk, PocketHolsters.com. There's probably another zillion guys out there, maybe even 2 zillion guys that are out there that are really good, that make really good holsters. And depending on what you're doing, pocket or outside the waistband or whatever, you can find good holsters on there, but you got to experiment for what works. Again, this is another thing to go to a gun shop for. The guys at the gun shop, they usually carry concealed. They'll share a lot of information with you based on the model you end up choosing. Before we get into the model, I'm going to go through a bit of a decision on semi-auto versus revolver. Some of this I touched base on in an earlier video, but I'll cover some of the basics. Revolvers typically hold 6 to 7 rounds in their cylinder. They're very hard to reload, basically impossible in a almost impossible in a concealed carry situation. But they're real simple to use. Semi-autos hold 10, 20 rounds in a magazine and reload very quickly. A little more complicated to use. Basic training, you'll be fine. I prefer a semi-auto. I would only, if I had to pick one gun, it would be a semi-auto. I actually do carry a revolver very often because of the reliability, but I would rarely carry a revolver on its own because it doesn't have enough ammunition capacity. So I like to carry it with a semi-auto if I do carry it. And there's some very light revolvers out there that's one of the reasons I particularly like it. But if you had a revolver and that's all you had, certainly better than nothing. I'll talk about semi-automatics and I'll switch to caliber and then we'll touch on caliber for revolvers, and then we'll wrap this up. For caliber, 380 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP are the typical calibers. There's a lot of other options. I'm not going to get into those. There's a lot of great rounds. Or another great calibers. I personally don't see a need to go for any other caliber than those. I think the 9mm is the best with modern cartridge technology. The differences in stopping power is negligible compared to the other calibers. It's actually better than 380. And negligible when compared to 40 or 45. You can carry more ammo, it's less expensive, less kick, it's easier to fire. And if you did choose a 9mm, you'd have a lot of commonality if you had a home defense firearm in 9mm. And in some cases, you could use your concealed carry 9mm for home defense and just have one pistol, although I would recommend having more than one pistol. Just a thought. But I carry 40s, 45s, 9mm, 38 specials, 357s, depending on what I'm doing. Again, that use case, what I'm wearing, where I'm going, a lot of things play into what I'm carrying at the time. So touching on revolvers. In revolver, 357 Magnum, 38 Special are the most common calibers. Touched on this in other videos. You can fire 38 Specials out of 357 Magnums, but you can't do it the other way around. You can buy things chambered specifically in 38 Special or specifically in 357. The 357 does give you the option of shooting the 38 Special, but if all you have is a 38 Special, that's a fine carry piece. And to be honest with you, I have small 357 Magnums that I never shoot Magnum loads out of because they're so light that they're uncomfortable to shoot. So 38 Special is fine. There's other calibers to go to, but I think for now that's what I would recommend. Now we'll talk about, I'm going to switch down the decision tree to make and model now that we've talked about caliber already. So in make and model, again, Smith & Wesson and Ruger are typically the most popular revolvers. Other good guys, Rossi, Taurus, Charter Arms, a lot of people I'm forgetting, my apologies. There's really too many models. There's so many good models here. But if I was going to pick a model with Ruger or Smith & Wesson, I would go the Ruger LCR or the Smith & Wesson M&P 340. But there's also the Smith & Wesson 637, 638, 649, Model 42, which is kind of an older one. If you just look at the Ruger LCR, that's a good idea of a platform size to think about for concealed carry for revolvers. And again, apologies for all the great models, manufacturers, and other points that I'm just kind of glossing over right now. Now I'll switch back to semi-autos, about if we're talking about manufacturer, make and model. A ton of great guys out there. My favorites, Glock, Smith & Wesson, and Springfield Armory. Ruger, F&H, Beretta, CZ, Colt, Remington, and Taurus are all fine. And again, I apologize, I'm missing a bunch of really good guys. There's high-end manufacturers I won't even mention that you'll spend thousands and thousands on. And there's some low-end guys like High Point that are probably 1/3 the price of a Glock or a Smith & Wesson that they're ugly as all get out, but they work, and they're just a bit heavy. So in terms of a model, if I had to narrow it down to what I would recommend, or something I'd say you can't go wrong with, Glock 19 or 26, these are in 9mm, the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Compact, and the Springfield XD 9 Subcompact in that order. A lot of great other models. You could also up those to 40 Smith & Wesson. I think you'd be fine. Heck, there's versions of those in 380. They may be a little bit different models, but you'd be fine with that too. I'm just giving you the things that I choose. And then typically I like carrying a Glock 26 or 27 and a Ruger LCR. A whole nother story on the rationale behind that, but sometimes I'll carry 2 Glocks. Sometimes I'll just carry the LCR when I'm in a hurry, even though I prefer not to carry just a revolver. In general, for carry, 28 to 32 ounces fully loaded is what I look at as a kind of high bar or for the maximum of a gun that I want to carry. After that, it starts to feel really heavy on my belt or in my pocket and seems to be kind of a pain. Occasionally I'll carry something as little as a Ruger LCP in 380 because I'm in gym shorts, and the Ruger LCP is different than the Ruger LCR. The Ruger LCR is in 357 Magnum, the Ruger LCP is in 380, and that little 380 is a wonderful little pistol, and we'll talk more about that in future videos. Getting towards the end here, again, other things you're going to need: ear and eye protection when you're shooting, a small gun safe to keep your gun in. Got to keep your gun and your magazines locked at all times. You got to have personal protection ammo. That's the kind that you actually keep loaded in the firearm. It's expensive. It tends to be better, a better man stopper, whatever that means. What it really means is tends to have better terminal ballistic performance, do a little bit more damage on human targets, but not have as bad over-penetration problems. I typically go Hornady Critical Duty, but Spear, Gold Dot, Corbon, Remington, lots of other good guys there that make good ammunition. I usually keep around 50 rounds of personal protection ammo and then 300 rounds of just practice ammo, which can be any cheap ammo, just to go to the range and practice, which you need to do at least every month or two, or you're not going to be proficient. And when the time comes, if the time comes, and pray the time never comes, but if it does, you need to practice and be proficient at it, or you won't be able to do what needs to be done. Always too, when I'm carrying, I always have a cell phone. Let's say someone was, approaching you, and by all means try to run and avoid it. That's the best thing to do. But if you were trapped and you're in an incident, someone's coming at you with a knife or a weapon, you draw your gun and they go away. You think, oh, great, fine. Everything's cool, nothing happened. And all of a sudden you get picked up by the police because whoever had that called first. One of the strange things about carrying concealed in these incidents, whoever calls first tends to get the benefit of the doubt. So if you ever have to draw your firearm, and I pray you never do, make sure you call 911 right away. Tell them what happened, tell them what's going on, full details, and that'll keep you out of trouble. And again, follow the laws on when you can draw, when you would draw. You got to think about scenarios. There's a lot of responsibility carrying. You can't just put a gun on and think everything's cool. You got to think about, what are the scenarios when I would draw, how I would train for that. Am I prepared for it? Am I quick enough on the draw? Have I practiced drawing and practiced dynamic and critical incident training at a shooting range under pressure? There's a lot to this, because the worst thing you could do is carry and accidentally hurt someone innocent, hurt yourself, hurt a family member. This is a huge responsibility. So when you're ready to make the final decision on your carry piece, go ahead and Google, or Yahoo, whatever your search engine is, and look for reviews on the model and the kinds of ammunition and holsters you want. There's people a lot more knowledgeable than me out there that have put great reviews that can give you all the information you want. Gun shops, a good gun shop is a great resource. Those guys and gals behind the counter do this for a living, and they'll set you up real well. So do the reviews, and as always, again, check the laws, train, and be safe. Understand firearms safety rules before you try any of this. So hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Always remember, think freedom.